What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back. As always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Bretto. We're going to continue on with our Packers free agency preview series, taking a closer look at TJ Slaton. We'll dive into why the Packers would re-sign him, why they'd let him go elsewhere, and then we'll make a prediction at the end. But first, before we do all that, you know what to do. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Bretto. Find all my work, including the article versions of what we're discussing here today, over at ESPNlacrosse.com. And my Wisconsin sports radio fans, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers, whatever you need, download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app. So like I said, our free agency preview series, this is my third off season going through each of the Packers free agents. We have a pretty good track record in terms of the predictions go. We'll see if we can keep that up here in 2025. Like I said, we take a look at each of the Packers free agents one by one. Why would the Packers choose to re-sign them? Why would they let them go elsewhere? And then we make a prediction at the end. So like I said, today we're talking about TJ Slaton. While the Packers pass rush as a whole, from their front four specifically, struggled, the run defense in 2025 was really good, as honestly one of the most improved areas of this Packers team under Jeff Hafley. On the season, Green Bay's run defense surrendered just 4 yards per carry. That was the third best mark in football. By ESPN's run stop rate metric, the Packers ranked 6th in all of football. And they, for the first time since 2009, held their opponents on average to under 100 rushing yards per game. The Green Bay Packers run defense was greatly improved this past season. And in the middle of all that, in the middle of that defensive front, you have TJ Slaton. On the surface, Slaton, and it's what comes with his role, right? He's not someone where you're going to go look at the stat sheet most weeks and he's just not going to leap off the page. That's not necessarily in the nature of what he's asked to do, what his role is in the middle of that Packers defense. But when TJ Slaton is playing at a high level, everyone around him knows it. Everyone around him feels that presence, and everyone around him benefits. When TJ Slaton's in the middle of a defense, playing at a high level, he's taking on double teams, right? He's occupying blockers. He's taking up space. And the trickle-down effect of that is if there's a double team he's taking on, what's a one-on-one matchup elsewhere for someone else to exploit? The space that he's taking up can create more spacing elsewhere along the defensive front. Helps keep the linebackers clean, able to flow with the ball carriers, able to shoot gaps. Again, able to create one-on-one opportunities for some of those edge defenders. So that impact, what was just described, not going to show up on the stat sheet, but of course very, very valuable when it comes to a defensive front success and the front seven success as a whole, especially in the run game. But on the stat sheet, TJ Slaton finished the year with 14 pressures, 1 sack, 32 tackles, 2 of which were for a loss. Out of 153 eligible defensive tackles, according to Pro Football Focus, TJ Slaton ranked 26 in run stops and was 22nd in run stop rate. So he was, by those metrics, one of the better run defenders, more impactful run defenders, I should say, in all of football last season. In addition to his contributions on defense, played 158 special team snaps last season on the field goal block and on the field goal protection units. And the Packers just don't have someone else on the roster currently who fits that mold, who from a body type standpoint, from the roles that he's asked to do, doesn't fit, doesn't fill in, doesn't slot in as the next, if TJ Slaton goes elsewhere, we can ask this player to take his role. That player isn't on the roster. So we look at the Packers' success in the run game, the role that TJ Slaton has in it, the fact that there doesn't appear to be really a plan B on the roster in terms of if he's not here, who's going to step in and fill that role. You add all that together, and that's a reason, big reasons why the Packers would prioritize bringing TJ Slaton back. And we can just talk about the impact quickly of overall, not just TJ Slaton, but when you have a really, really good run defense, that typically sets up the rest of your defense for success. We've talked about it on here before. When you're containing the opponent's run game, keeping them behind the sticks, so they're in second and long, third and long situations, you're putting them in predictable passing situations, right? If it's 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9, you know a passing play is most likely coming. As a defense, that gives you the advantage. The pass rush, you're able to pin your ears back, get after the quarterback, play the passing game. From a coverage standpoint, defenders in the secondary have the advantage. When it's 3rd and 8, there's only so many routes out there that an offense can run that gets them past the first down marker. You have, as a defense as a whole, you very much have a huge advantage, a huge upper hand when you're first able to eat your vegetables, contain the run on the early downs, and that then in turn should set you up for success on those 2nd and 3rd downs over the course of the game. And again, you can get off the field, you don't let the opponent control the game on the ground. That's more possessions for your offense. That allows your offense to do the dictating. They're in predictable passing situations. You as the defense is doing the dictating. Again, the massive trickle-down effect from it as a whole, the positive impact that a good run defense can have on the rest of the defense. And again, for the reasons mentioned, TJ Slaton's impact, his role, are all reasons why the Packers would prioritize bringing him back for this upcoming season. All right, now the other side of the coin. Why wouldn't the Green Bay Packers re-sign TJ Slaton? They're going to have to add to this defensive front this offseason. They have to. The pass rush absolutely has to get better in 2025. As we said before, the play of the pass rush, how consistent the pass rush is, how effective the pass rush is going to determine the ceiling for this Green Bay Packers defense. In addition, 2 additions have to be made during the offseason to get a higher impact out of that element on the defensive side of the ball for the Packers. And re-signing TJ Slaton, if the Packers were to do that, that doesn't change their need to address the position. That's still something that would have to get done, regardless of whether they sign TJ Slaton or don't sign TJ Slaton. So if you bring TJ Slaton back and you still have to add to the defensive line, now you're double dipping, right? You just signed a free agent. I know it's an in-house free agent, but you still signed a free agent. You still have to add to the position, whether it's an outside free agent, whether it's utilizing a premium draft pick on the position. So I guess my question in this instance is, how are you better? Is the Packers' defensive front better relative to the amount of resources that they've invested into the position in this scenario? And by no means do I think TJ Slaton, his next contract is going to break the bank by any means. But if you're bringing him back, you're devoting, I'm going to guess, several $1 million worth of salary cap space over the course of a multi 3 or 4 year deal, whatever it would end up being. And you still have to either go out and spend more cap space because you need to add to the position still, or you're spending a first, second round pick on the position. Is your defensive front, again, relative to what you're investing into it, that much better off? Versus you let TJ Slaton go, you go invest salary cap dollars into a free agent, or you go invest a first or second round pick into the defensive line position. I think for me, that's one of the big questions that I think putting ourselves as best we can in Brian Gutekunst's shoes as he's evaluating, resource allocation in terms of both cap dollars and draft capital. If you double dip at the position, which isn't a bad thing, if the Packers go out and spend a first round pick and a fourth round pick on a defensive line, that's not a bad thing. But look at the value you're getting in return, right? You're getting a premium high-end talent with that first round pick. You're getting 2 rookie deals, team-friendly rookie deals that are now on your salary cap books for the next 4 seasons. You're not getting that same kind of double dipping value when you re-sign TJ Slaton and then you go and use a first or second round pick on the defensive line position. I also think something that the Packers would run into in this scenario, again, you bring TJ Slaton in, because again, that doesn't solve the need. You still have to go add someone, is a roster construction standpoint. When we fast forward to the end of August and we get to talking about, all right, what's the 53-man roster going to look like? There's already 5, again, if Slayton's back, 5 defensive tackles who were on the 53-man roster last year. TJ Slaton, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, and Kobe Wooden. Let's say you go out and spend a first or second round pick. That's 6 defensive tackles that you now have. Are you going to roster 6 defensive tackles when your rotation in season is only 4 or 5? So that means each week you now have 1, who knows, maybe 2 defensive tackles that are inactive on Sundays. And in order to keep a 6th defensive tackle, you've now had to go short elsewhere, right? You've gone with 1 less tight end, 1 less offensive lineman, receiver, cornerback, whatever it may end up being. You've had to go lighter elsewhere when that additional player is just going to be inactive on Sundays. So from a roster construction standpoint, who would you move on from in that instance? And when we look at how Brian Gutekunst wants to construct the roster, keeping the veteran, in TJ Slaton's case, going into his 5th NFL season, keeping the veteran rotational run defender who played just 39% of the defensive snaps last season over someone, let's use Kobe Wooden as an example, who still has 2 years left on his rookie deal. To me, that doesn't necessarily align with how I would expect Brian Gutekunst to operate from a roster building standpoint. So those are some of the big, I think, factors in play. Again, performance on the field obviously matters a ton, but as we have these conversations and work through, are the Packers going to bring them back? We have to take into account the current construction of that position group. What might it look like come August when the 53-man roster is being constructed? How does bringing this player back impact if another addition has to be made? Draft, free agency, so all these different factors. And I think the addition or bringing back TJ Slaton doesn't alter, doesn't really change, doesn't solve the problem, right? Like we said, you still have to go out and add to that room, but it creates a logjam. And a rotational run defender who played 39% of the snaps last season, like I said, taking a roster spot over Kobe Wooden, who still has 2 years left on his rookie deal, again, just does not align with how I see Brian Gutekunst wanting to operate, how I see Brian Gutekunst wanting to build out his roster. Another part of this equation, we got to look at the draft class. This year's defensive tackle class, defensive line class as a whole, absolutely loaded. Daniel Jeremiah of NFL.com, one of the best in the business when it comes to the NFL draft. He recently put out his top 50 prospect big board for this upcoming draft. 16 of the 50 were defensive linemen. Packers are going to have their opportunity in round 1, round 2 to land a potential high impact player who could be an upgrade over TJ Slaton, who could give you maybe a more well-rounded presence than TJ Slaton, again, who's primarily been a run defender. And in addition to that, you're getting someone on a relatively inexpensive, team-friendly 4-year rookie deal and potentially with a 5th-year option if the Packers use a first-round pick on the position. So I think for me, as I look at why might the Packers go in a different direction, let TJ Slaton go elsewhere in free agency, those are really the big points of emphasis for me. The loaded draft class at the defensive line position, his return doesn't necessarily, again, impact. It doesn't erase the need. It still exists. You still have to address the position. And then there's a logjam that I think goes against the grain from what we've seen from Brian Gutekunst do during his tenure as general manager and how he wants to construct his roster, his 53-man roster. All right, prediction time. My prediction, the Green Bay Packers do not re-sign TJ Slaton. And again, for the big reasons, if I had to highlight, I have 4 main reasons here why. Roster building standpoint. Re-signing a rotational, specific run defender veteran who you'd probably have to prioritize over one-year rookie deals like Kobe Wooden that we used in the example just doesn't align with what I would expect Brian Gutekunst to do from how he wants to build out his roster. And again, don't mistake that concept for me saying that the status quo is fine or that there shouldn't be added competition. We know how important that element was to the Packers' growth over the last 2 years throughout their entire roster. That isn't my way of saying that there doesn't need to be playing time adjustment that happens. But again, prioritizing a 5th-year veteran who's played 39% of the snaps, who fills a niche role over, again, a 3rd-year defender with 2 years left on his rookie deal that you're still trying to develop. Again, I keep saying this, but just does not align with, I think, how we've seen how Brian Gutekunst wants to construct his roster. Now, for the right player, would Brian Gutekunst go down that path? I think absolutely. I think that's always in play. But again, for the reasons mentioned, I don't think that TJ Slaton is that right player. Secondly, the signing, as we mentioned, doesn't change the need for the Packers, but it reduces their resources, reduces salary cap space, creates a logjam on the roster, as we mentioned. And again, those are all things that come into consideration and have to be navigated. The fit, I think that's a question as well within Jeff Hafley's defense. We saw this past season, Jeff Hafley did a masterful job of adjusting, adapting his defense based not only on the opponent on a week-to-week basis, but what are the strengths of his players and how do we put them in the best position to succeed? But from a pure, what TJ Slaton does best compared to Jeff Hafley's 4-3 defense and what he wants to accomplish, TJ Slaton is not the prototypical interior defender that you would put in the middle of this defense. So do the Packers use this as an opportunity to go out and find one of those players? And then lastly, again, as mentioned, a really, really, really strong defensive line class. Packers can go out and find a high-impact player to take TJ Slaton's roster spot, and they get a team-friendly rookie deal in the process, and we know how incredibly valuable that is to Brian Gutekunst. So my prediction, the Green Bay Packers do not re-sign TJ Slaton. All right, my friends, there you have it. As always, I appreciate you tuning in, and you know what? If you've come this far in the video, you might as well hit like, and you might as well hit subscribe. Again, I do greatly appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work, including the article versions of what we discuss here over at ESPNLacrosse.com. My Wisconsin sports radio fans, download the 1055 ESPN Lacrosse app. Till next time, friends, take care.